Hello everyone, good morning, welcome back to Gwent. My name is Rooster and today we're taking a look at how a new player can approach the opening of their kegs as well as the crafting of some cards that are essential to their decks. So let's take a look at the collection. My trial account, my testing account to test the new player's experience with is now level 5. I have been playing the exact decks I showed in the new player experience video. I will probably make a fancy link if I remember how that works again somewhere on the screen right now. So click on that if you haven't seen that video yet. But I have been using mostly those decks on the ladder. I've been doing surprisingly well with them, although the matchups are generally not that balanced right now, so that is a thing CDPR is still looking at. But I did manage to get somewhere in the realms of a 60% win rate, and most of the games I lost were actually games that, that were up against much higher level players. So I don't feel too terrible about that, except for the fact that I shouldn't be facing those players. But yeah, what can you do about it? So I did receive a couple cards, just wanted to zoom in on that real quick before we start opening some kegs. Got a Wild Hunt Warrior, not too impressive, a Griffin, which is probably usable, if not too impressive at the lower ranks, since people don't really have too many impressive cards in their graveyard that need to be removed immediately. I don't think there's something worth mentioning in Northern Realms. I did get, let's see if I had Sapper, which is not particularly noteworthy, as well as one more card I should mention, I guess, is we've got a third First Light, which is one that you actually craft as part of the tutorial, so I probably should have edited the starter decks, including this one, because you get, basically, I think it's a free keg in exchange for crafting a First Light with 30 scraps that you get from doing the tutorial, so yeah, that's nice. Nothing that should be mentioned here, so let's hop into the keg opening menu here and see how we can approach opening new kegs as a new player. We've got 11 kegs waiting. This is basically from like 3 days of playing since the last episode, so 3 days to level 5, maybe it was 4 days, and that's basically just doing the first tier of daily rewards, as well as doing the second tier, but only for today, I think. And let's see what we get, how useful these cards will be for us. So Mardrem is nice, really often used, so we'll probably manage to slot that into quite a number of decks. Rest of the cards, Neckers and Blue Stripes Commandos, will soon be drowning in, because those are the cards, actually Queen's card also. These are 3 D3 commons actually that you'll have the most of, so that's a good thing to talk about right now. Commons, there are 3 commons and 2 rares that have 3 different arts, and thus they will appear 3 times as much in your boosters. Therefore, well, crafting these should absolutely be out of the question, and what I should mention is also that you can probably get a little bit of extra scraps if you disenchant the extra copies of the alternate arts that you have from these cards. So if you're short by just a little bit of scrap to craft the card you want, these 3 are the main cards to look for. But let's continue to the exciting part, which is the rares. Now, first of all, a new player should definitely recognize that silver and gold cards that you already have are of absolutely no value to you. So, for the long-term investment, we could go for a monster nest here, because, well, we're more likely to find 1 copy of Reinforced Siege Tower and 1 copy of Monster Nest than to find 2 specific copies of 1 specific rare card. So we could go for the Monster Nest here. If you would like to build a deck around Reinforced Siege Tower, you could go and pick that up right now. But it is not a very important card, except for maybe the Henselt deck, which is not really all that competitive. So let's just go for the long-term investment here and take the Monster Nest. Not terribly exciting so far, but picking some of these cards up, especially the Martyrdom. The Martyrdom is a good get, I think. So hoping for something more exciting in the last slot in our last booster, but you can never know. Perhaps the game is trying to tell us something. That is all three different arts of Neckers, but Neckers can be tough to use for a newer player, so I'm not entirely sure about that. Manticore Venom, not awful. If you face a lot of Scoia'tael, you might decide to slot this in. Perhaps it's not the most awful idea ever. And a third Fiend could be good if we wanted to go for a bigger monster deck. But we do need some actual consume synergy cards to really make that work, I think. The Fiend, that said, can probably slot that in somewhere. For the rare slot here, none of these cards particularly exciting again, so we definitely don't want to pick the third Siege Tower again, because it's reasonably likely that we'll get the third copy whenever we don't have a choice, or we'll get the third copy of this before we fill out these most of the time. Dimeritium Shackles is a good option to have, so I think I'm tempted to go for this card. You do get a free copy of Dimeritium Shackles at level 12, I believe, from the top of my head. So not that high a priority pick, and it isn't really needed immediately in one of our starter decks. That said, Savage Bear just isn't very good right now, so let's pick the Shackles and go on with our lives. Not terribly exciting here. Now what we're really looking for are rare cards that we can immediately slot into our decks, and second Martyrdom, not awful, third Longship, not terrible at all. So we're picking up some good stuff for Skellige so far, but the last card will have to show that. Now, Reaver Hunters are one of the rare cards that have three different arts. The other card being... can I remember that from the top of my head? Oh, Wild Hunt Rider, of course. You really only want to include them in your deck in sets of 3, that being said, they are a really commonly seen rare card in your kegs, so may not want to give it that much priority. I do think picking the second copy of Griffin is a better long-term investment than the first Reaver Hunter. But we may actually want to try a deck with Reaver Hunter, so I think I'll just pick it. Griffins just don't really work at the low end of the ladder, because they're really only working against Skellige, although I guess you can actually do some Northern Realm stuff with them. Yeah, let's go for the long-term investment and pick the Griffin here. You really shouldn't eat yourself up about picking the wrong rare card, because in a few weeks you'll have most of the rare cards in more copies than you know what to do with. Third Martyrdom, not awful, another Blowstripes and a Queen's Guard. You'll soon find that you'll have more of these than you know what to do with. Third Triad Brigade, it is what it is. We probably won't use it. Now a Mahakam Guard, if we were to focus on a Dwarven Scoia'tael deck, which is not all that viable to beginners, unfortunately, I would pick this one. But the Thunderbolt Potion is immediately useful in some of our decks, so pretty happy to pick that up. Would pick it over the first copy of the Guard. If I already had 2 Thunderbolts, I probably would go for the Guard, just because it's reasonably likely to pick up another Thunderbolt sometime in the nearby future. So let's pick the second Thunderbolt, definitely usable, and go on to the next keg. Oh, and we actually get a rare in our first few slots. Already got a 4th copy of a Fiend, a third Queen's Guard. Queen's Guard's not terribly impressive for a beginner. It really only starts to shine when you actually have a Ceres unit to buff with them. So that's a little unfortunate for newer players. Reinforced Trebuchet could be good. It used to be a really really infamous unit for being buffed up and then copied with the full test ability. That could still be a game plan for an early Northern Realms deck. So definitely worth considering. Now we've got a couple of Blue Stripes Commandos, so Vess could be a valid option here, but Giant Toad immediately is a decent inclusion in a monster deck. I'm not sure whether Consume Monsters is really where we want to go, but it is a decent silver card, and it is more immediately useful than Vess, I think. So let's go for the Giant Toad here. I actually don't have this card on my main account yet, which is rather curious. Anyway, looks like we have some decent options for monsters at the very least. Let me take a sip of my water here. Let's see. Nothing too particularly exciting. The Untitled Chapter can work. Can actually do some work in our Scoia'tael deck, so I shouldn't dismiss it too soon. Another epic, alright. None of them really that exciting. We could try the Champion of Champions in our Skellige deck. Might be a little optimistic, but as long as we don't have any... what am I thinking of? Any pirates yet? We could try and make this work. Although beginner decks do tend to have a nice amount of removal, so I'm not sure whether this plan is going to work out. That being said, Fire Elemental and Melina, both of them actually don't really offer too much. But seeing as we might want to try a Consume strategy, for example, we could pick the Fire Elemental here and see if we can make that work. Now with the buffs coming up, I could do a guess, hazard a guess and think these cards might get buffed. I don't really want to prophesize on that for too long. We really can't expect what's to come. So let's go with the Fire Elemental. Lesser Fire Elementals are actually breedable, and we did pick up an extra monster nest, so we can try and make that work. Perhaps. This is not the direction I was expecting this to go in, but you can never know what you'll open. And with the Giant Toad, I think we might be onto something here. Now, more monster cards would be nice. Really nice to pick up a third Foglot, and actually the third Arakas is not as terrible as it may seem, because we really want to have these in threes. And it would be really awkward if we had to craft them, so I'm actually really happy to see these. Vanguard, also a really reasonable card in our Scoia'tael deck, so that's nice to pick those up. For our rare slot, now, a mistake I did make when I just started this game, I think, is pick up a second Scorch, which does absolutely nothing for you. Hawker Healer is a strong card, not a card that you'll likely want to include 3 of in your deck, though. So I don't really value the third copy of it too highly. So let's just pick up a Longship, should we find we want to actually do something in Skellige with that. Because I don't expect to make use of the third healer copy anytime soon. So the better long-term investment again would be to pick the card. Ooh. Well, and we got Vess anyway, so it's good that we didn't pick her up just a few moments ago. Wow. Alright, and these are a lot of cards that we basically have no use for. Another Thunderbolt potion, but I'm going for the Akimara here, which is actually immediately useful for our Consume deck, so that's nice. And the other cards, the Berserker is A, not really a good card, and B, we already have 2 copies of both of these, so I would definitely like to pick up my first Akimara here. Alright. And picked up a Vess, which we actually could make work in our Northern Realms deck if we had a little more synergy with the Consume strategy. And we have plenty of Blue Stripes Commandos to combo with it. Dwarven Skirmisher, also a pretty good card, so we might find room for that in our Scoia'tael deck. Would like to see that. Now, Stemmelfort's Tremors is expected to get a buff in the next patch, but for now I would probably skip it in favor of a Mahakam Defender, because that might actually be a thing that works in combination with the the dwarven cards that we opened that buffs dwarves, so we could make that work, possibly. Not really expecting us to go the dwarven route with our Scoia'tael deck, but we could conceivably make use of that. Now only a few kegs to go, and let's see what we get. There's a lot of the same cards actually. This is like my 6th Dryad Brigade, I think. Nothing particularly worthwhile to talk about here, I think. Clembrockvar Archer can do work in a Herald Skellige deck, but since we don't have Herald, that's not really all that worthwhile to talk about. Now the Ghoul, the Consume strategy is looking more and more appealing. So I will take the second Ghoul over the first Dragoon, even though Dragoon is a marginally playable card, and I would like to pick up a few copies of those, but that'll have to wait for the longer term. I think the Ghoul is actually immediately useful, so definitely picking that one up first. Alright. Just 2 more kegs to go, I think. And anything exciting over here? A 4th Wild Hunt Warrior, nothing really worth talking about. The Clan-on-Crate Raiders are kinda weak right now, so I wouldn't really recommend going the full-on discard route with Skellige at the moment. Did we pick up another Reaver Hunter copy? I think we did not. I don't really remember. Now this is where I could Alt F4 out of this window here, or can I just press Escape? Can I press right? No, I cannot immediately exit out of this, but we could just Alt F4 out of the game and restart the game and then check whether we have another Reaver Hunter. I'm assuming I don't have one, so I will pick up a Water Hag here. Although silver rare cards are also, well, they're not slightly more common than bronze rare cards. But for bronze rare cards, you do actually need 3 copies of those, and you only need 1 copy of silver rare. So you will have a lot of spares of cards like Water Hag eventually. So that's why I would give slightly higher priority to Raging Berserker if Raging Berserker were actually a playable card. But I will pick the Water Hag over it right now, because that card is actually pretty good in a monster deck, and I did. I should have mentioned, I guess, but I kind of forgot. I did pick up a Drowner, which it actually synergizes with, so that's worth checking out, I think. So let's take a look at our decks we have right now, and see what we can do to improve them. So, for example, our basic monster deck. Now, the immediate inclusions here are probably always going to be our silver cards that we picked up. So for this variation of the deck, I would definitely like to add the Water Hag. I would like to add the Toad. Now this is a bit of an odd combination, of course, because the Water Hag does weather the row that the Manticore and the Toad are in. However, if this is our only rain effect, we could conceivably play around this. So that's not really that big of a worry for me right now. We would definitely want to find room for a second Foglet, so that's something. We didn't pick up a third Ancient Foglet yet, so that would be an inclusion. So from here on, we can take this deck into 2 different routes. Basically, we're either going weather heavy, or we're trying to actually consume stuff, and I would like to actually do a consume route, but that would involve adding the Fire Elemental, which is not really going to work in the deck as we're using it right now. So in that case, I would probably actually cut the Water Hag again and disregard anything I said before. Cut all of the Foglets, as well as, can we just, yeah, this works. Alright, so we cut this. We still don't have a third Wild Hunt Rider. That would be nice to have picked up. But we can add 3 Neckers here, which is nice. So that actually works with our consume strategy. We can add the Ghoul, and I think we have an Ekimara over here. The third Fiend is also pretty good, and then we probably cut whatever doesn't fit anymore, such as the Wild Hunt Warriors. Add the Behemoth let's see if we can make sense of this deck here. Add the Behemoth and a couple of Arakas, basically to replace the Foglots with. They act basically the same as Foglots, actually. You don't want to have them in your starting hand, and I don't know whether this is worth it with the single Arakas Behemoth we have, though. Arakas are pretty terrible to draw into, but I guess they're actually breedable, so we could try and make this work. I think it's worth a try at the very least. So we could do something like this with 2 Monsters' Nests, and then probably... what do we want to cut? The Fiends are mostly in here because they're big and they taste juicy. The Golems are here because the lesser Golems are actually breedable again, so we definitely want to remove this and add some Thunderbolt potions, and then we cut the Weather, of course. And we're getting somewhere. So double Thunderbolt potion, probably cut an Ulcer's Thunder, cut the Epidemic, certainly. And then cut a little bit more Chaff. This looks a little optimistic, but I do think we're onto something here. I don't want to take too long, so I can probably find 5 more cards to cut from here. But this is looking like a lot more of a synergistic deck than we had before. So I would like to try this out. Now another deck that we could try and modify. Let's see. We had some Northern Realms stuff that we could reasonably give a try. We had Vess here, for example, and I would like to make that work. We should be fine on the Blue Mountain Commandos, I feel. So we have a couple of those. Did we? Yes, there we go. Add them in 3 different flavors, of course. Oh, what happened there? Okay. I was a little confused over there, but that did work out. So with Vess, we might want to add, for example, a couple of promotes. That could definitely work. 2 promotes sounds okay. Do we have any other bronzes we could add? Not really that much, unfortunately. So you would definitely want to go the route with the Reverse Scouts, I feel. We don't have too many of those cards yet. What are the weakest cards in the deck right now? I feel the Ballistas are really weak, because 2 damage often isn't enough to really make a meaningful impact. So those are easy cuts. The Thunderbolt potion could be decent. Oh, I would like to add a Redanian Knight, and then probably... oh, actually, these are not horrible with Vess, so I may actually wish to add these, remove these, for example. And make a list like this work. Anything else we really wish to include? Not really. Perhaps the Adrenaline Rush plan is a bit optimistic. So we could try and make Vess work. Might not be all that worthwhile, but we should soon get into a much better, more synergistic deck, like it was before. Now let's take a look at Skellige. Did we have anything worthwhile to add to this deck? I wonder. Nothing that really made a lasting impact on me, but we can take a quick look at the cards we opened. I don't think Queen's cards are worth including without a Ceres unit, so that is a little unfortunate. Would probably like to add the 3rd Longship here. Would really like to find a 3rd Priestess anytime soon. What is the card I would replace the Longship for? Probably the Uncrate Warrior. And then I would like to also kind of remove... I would like to remove the War Cry, since it feels like kind of a liability after playing with the deck a little bit. Oh, and we could actually add 1 or 2 Mardrum to the deck, because when you start reanimating stuff, then the Mardrum does increase in value, because you basically get the strength twice. So that could be pretty good. What other cards could I cut? I can easily cut a Clanbrook for Hunter, since the Mardrum basically accomplishes the same thing. So not too many updates for Skellige here, but you can't have them all. And for Scoia'tael we also got some pretty reasonable cards, I feel. So we could go for something like... we probably want to add a few Mardrums. The Trapper is a pretty decent option. Although it is a little less impressive without a Yavin to add into the deck, so that would be the first card I would like to add to this one. The Vanguard is pretty good, so I would like to find a spot for that, and we could try and go for a more dwarf-centric build, but that seems a little sketchy right now. Oh, and we actually did not pick up the dwarf at all. That might have just been my memory in that case, but in each case, these should be worthwhile if we pick up a few dwarf buffing cards. Right now, not too synergistic with the rest of the deck, and neither are, for example, the Vryat Grey Gates are relatively easy cuts, I think. Would like to add the third First Light also, which is kind of essential in any deck with Elven Mercenaries. So would like to add that. And then we can make some room by cutting the last Brigade. Maybe the Sheldon's kegs, although 10 power for a silver card is still reasonably okay in the position we are in right now. I might cut a Firebolt Trap actually, since we don't have any Blue Mountain Commandos yet. They're actually not all that impressive. What did I just cut? Because we did go down from... maybe I'm just delusional right now. I feel I did cut something and just didn't notice. Anyway, from among these decks, the monster deck is looking like at least the most interesting one, and I'm actually excited to try this one out. But that should give you a decent idea of what you should be looking for when you're opening kegs, and perhaps a more long-term strategy to open up reasonable cards. Let's take a quick look at our collection, because we do have a reasonable, well, actually not too many scraps that we can use right away, but we could craft ourselves one epic card. To improve our decks with, and we do. I should probably show you the duplicate problem with the Queen's Guard and the other cards with multiple artworks. So we have a reasonable distribution of Neckers here, but for example, when we look at the Queen's Guard, we have 3 different arts of them. So that means we definitely don't need the second copy of this one, so we can safely mill that. And for the Blue Mountain Commandos, that is also one to look for. We can safely mill 4 of those. So if you need a couple of extra scraps, definitely that should be the first place to look. And besides that, what would I craft right away when I would want to craft an epic card right now, for example? First instinct would be to still go for some kind of monster card. So, for example, Caretaker. That is a little expensive and is not an epic card, actually. And in the breeding monster deck, I'm not really sure of an epic card that is actually worth crafting, and will also work in other decks. So maybe the Monster Absorb deck is not really something that a new player should try. Can't say I would hardly recommend it. If we were to go for a more weather-centric monster deck, then we could definitely go with a Woodland Spirit, for example. Great craft for new players. A Caranthir, definitely recommended. And we can even go for something like a neutral card, which could be worth it. Let's go take a quick look at neutral epic cards. Whether there's anything we would immediately want. Keep in mind, Ciri is available for free at level 18, so probably don't want to invest in that one. And the same applies to Decoy. Here we go. Decoy you get for free at level 20. So if you're the kind of person like me that doesn't like making long-term investments, that likes making long-term investments, then you don't want to craft Decoy. You could go with the argument that Decoy is a really powerful card, so you might as well craft it early, get some use out of it. I would say there are plenty of other cards, like for example the King of Beggars or Geralt Igni, that also enhance the power of your deck by enough that that they will last you until you unlock a decoy for free. Any cards I would like to craft for now? That is a good question. Taking a look at neutral epics, I don't really see anything I would recommend crafting for that deck in specific right now. So I would probably go with one of the other factions actually, and that means if we're looking at Northern Realms, could probably recommend crafting Shani. Very good card. Crafting Neneke is not a bad investment. Crafting Priscilla, that's the usual suspects I think for Northern Realms. Definitely a good investment. So if I had any decent, if I had the expectation that I could make a decent Northern Realms deck with what I have right now, I would definitely craft Shani right now, I think. For Scoia'tael, I was already talking about this, but Yavin is a very high priority craft for them. Other cards that I would consider crafting for Scoia'tael, it's a little doubtful. Scoia'tael has a lot of flexible spots, so you could go for Milva, for example, very good card. Teruviel, not everyone is a big fan of her, but she can definitely work, especially at the lower ranks. Nature's Gift, not a bad card, but does require some synergy in the special department of your deck. So once you've got a decent Mercenary plus Blue Mountain Commando shell, you can definitely consider crafting this one. For Skellige, Skellige is another easy, well, relatively easy one. Because you'll likely want to craft Sigurd Rifa first, a very powerful card in most of those Skellige decks. And second, probably going with Birna. Birna is pretty great. Donar would be number 3, I guess. And then you could consider for most of those factions to look at legendary cards and just collect scraps for just a little longer. Anyway, that is going to be it for today. I'm going to occasionally hop back onto this account and see how it goes. Give you an update on how it's going, but my main account is also still free to play, and after just, I think I've been playing for 2 months approximately by now, I can basically craft any reasonable deck I want on that account also, so don't worry too much about what cards to craft, what cards to pick. You can always go to Reddit, go to the Gwent Discord channel, and ask people there for opinions. Don't be shy. There's a lot of people out there that want to help new players. But don't worry too much about what to open, because this game is pretty generous with its resources that it gives to players. And especially when you can hop into the ranked queue, there's plenty of rewards to have. The level up rewards are also pretty reasonable. So if you picked wrongly, don't fret. You'll probably be able to craft whatever card you want within a week. Don't worry too much. But long-term investments can still definitely be worth it, because it would be a shame if you were to craft a lot of rare cards and then open all of them over the course of the next week. And you can definitely be competitive with just a few. Well, I've been reasonably competitive in my own MMR with just the starter decks right now, so don't feel too bad about that. In each case, that is it for today. So, hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.